Hey everybody, and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Warhammer Underworlds Direchasm expansion, Kainan's Reapers. Coming in hot, or cold since they're undead, at $40 US, you're going to get 6 miniatures, 68 cards for use in the game, and that's it. Now the miniatures are push fit and do not require glue, but I do recommend you still go ahead and glue them. But as playing pieces for the Warhammer Underworlds game, if you don't, all you need is a strong pair of clippers and a hobby knife to trim down whatever you overcut or to remove some of the flash, and you're good to go. So let's do a quick breakdown on the lore. They belong to the Ossiarch Bone Reapers faction in Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Mir Kainan is under direct orders from Nagash to collect Bone Tithes. Benar Kenta is his herald. So think of him as kind of like the mouth of Sauron in a way, that he is the one that does the talking for Mir while Mir just swings his giant scythe. Basically, these guys are undead taxmen and absolutely terrifying. And with that all out of the way, let's take a look at the models. First up, let's look at Nohe. He is the hunter of the group and the ranged combat expert. He's armed with a Netherite bow and has 2 special abilities: Mortec Advance and Netherite. And Mortec Advance is simply, after this fighter moves, you can move another Mortec fighter and assign them a move action that has to end with them being adjacent to this fighter. So basically you're moving a pair of miniatures fighters together to where they're going to basically form a line. The only caveat is they cannot have a move token and they cannot have a charge token already to perform this action. And Netherite is simply, you get +1 damage on your attack roll if it contains a half support icon, and there's 1 friendly supporting Mortec, or if it contains any half support icon and or full support icon, and there are 2 or more friendly supporting Mortecs. So basically, you're going to be doing more damage as they fight in closer ranks together and support each other. Because normally those support icons, they don't translate to damage, but here they will, because they're just basically ganging up. Instantly comes to mind the Ray Harryhausen skeletons, and they're swarming like Jason and the Argonauts. That's what comes to my mind. Next up is Karoo, and easily my favorite miniature of the group. He's armed with the Netherite club, and he also has the special abilities of Mortec Advance and Netherite. In fact, they all do, with the exception of Mir himself, or herself, whatever the gender is of a skeleton. I don't know what that would be. But this was a really neat sculpt. I really liked it. I liked the club a lot. I was almost tempted to do like a blood splatter on the club, but I just wanted it clean. I didn't want to dirty up any of the miniatures with blood effects or anything like that. I just really liked it. I like how the weapons turned out. They have almost a magical, mystical quality to them, and it makes sense. Also, I like the subtle glow in his eyes of the green. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. It might be too subtle, but definitely in person you can see it. Next up is Hakur, or Hacker. You know, with the way it's spelled, I mean, it almost has like a Masters of the Universe ring to it, where you would think it would be like Hacker, you know, because he's got a giant, you know, broadsword, great blade type thing. But yeah, that's what he's armed with, a Soul Cleaver Great Blade, they call it. He only has the Mortec Advance. He does not have the Netherite special ability. I know I mentioned earlier that Mir doesn't have it, but he's also kind of an oddball. He only has the 1 ability. I like him too. He turned out pretty well. His sword is just comically big. I mean, I imagine he was a barbarian in a previous life. But sweet looking miniature, a lot of fun to paint, easy to put together too. Gotta say that. He was one of the easier ones, and these are all pretty easy to put together. Next up is Senha, and Senha has a Netherite blade. And Senha is kind of more of your sword and board pose, you know, having the shield and the sword. And it's just a very dynamic pose as well. I like it a lot. It's like just challenging or bellowing, or just came up after like countering someone's move or sword play. Very neat pose, very dynamic. That gets thumbs up for me. I also like how you can see a little bit of the gap between the jawbone and the back of the skull as it rotates around. So it's not just one solid piece. Sometimes when you see a skeleton miniature, the skull is like all one piece, and you can just paint the inside of the mouth. But here there is that gap, and I kind of really like that. It kind of stands out. And now we get to the professional smack talker himself, the mouth behind the warband, Mir Kainan. Now Kenta here, he's kind of like walking down these stairs. He also has a crow there, picking out some delicious treats from that skull. I will say that I had trouble with my miniature with the crow actually sitting down on its feet. If you look really closely, you can see a huge gap between the top of the bird and the legs, right? I just couldn't get it to go down. For whatever reason, I just couldn't. And I didn't want to break the staff. I tried bending it a little bit with some heat to make it all fit. It just wouldn't. So I was like, you know what? When I'm looking down at the table, you're not going to notice. You know, and I'm not entering these in for like awards or anything like that, or a competition. So the bird just has floating thighs or invisible thighs. Who knows? And in fact, maybe if I wouldn't have called it out, you wouldn't have noticed. Maybe. Mir does have the special ability of Bone Tithe, and basically what that says is like whenever you kill an enemy fighter, you get 1 tithe counter, and then if that fighter had wounds of 4 or more, you get 2. It's pretty nice because like once you get 3 tithe counters, your whole army becomes, your whole warband becomes inspired, and the stats all get better on those characters. Pretty neat. So let's get to the main event. Mir Kainan. He is this giant executioner looking dude or dudette. I don't care. It is frightening. That axe is Mondo. Kainan has 2 special rules. It has Bone Tithe and Invigorated, and what Invigorated does is at the start of the fighter's activation, you can discard 2 tithe counters. If you do, you get to pick 1 modifier and apply it to the end of the activation. And those modifiers can be either a +1 move, his Soul Reaper axe has +1 dice, or +1 damage. So he can either move faster or get to chopping a little bit harder. If it were me, I'd probably get to chopping a little bit harder. Very, very neat. This is the miniature reason I bought the warband, actually. I don't really play Warhammer Underworlds. I play it online through Steam. I don't, over the past 2 years, I haven't really been able to obviously go to a game store to play, and I have no one locally here that I know to play with. So basically I bought these just to paint up because I like skeletons a lot, and the way that these came together, and after painting them and looking at them and looking at the lore, I ran out and bought the Ossiarch Bone Reapers Battle Tome for Age of Sigmar. And now I'm looking at possibly picking up more miniatures for the Bone Reapers. I already have Nagash, who I've not assembled yet, but I have the big bad. I just need the flunkies. And I think this is going to be the start of a fun little Age of Sigmar side project, an army. And we'll see where it goes. But overall, this miniature is my favorite. I know I said I liked Karoo earlier, but Kainan is by far my favorite. I took some chances with where I applied paint. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be, so I was kind of struggling at parts, like around his collar, what would be gold and what wouldn't be, or what was bone and what wasn't. And I just went ahead and was like, you know what? He's got a lot of bone growth coming out of the armor. That's fine. And then on the right shoulder, he's got the gold on that pauldron, and that just works. The purple was really fun to do, and it's one of the few times that I've actually layered purple, or actually colors in general, where I went through and I was like lightening them up gradually to try to create a gradient. So hopefully it succeeds. I think it does. It's not the best you'll ever see. Obviously, I'm not a pro painter, but it's definitely good enough for tabletop standard, and it will work on, for gaming. Not Golden Demon, but it'll work for gaming. As mentioned earlier, you get a bunch of cards, and you get your 6 unit cards, 6 fighter cards, whatever they want to call them. They're there. And then you also get all the universal cards, the objective cards, the ploy cards, and that's what powers your warband. So the more warbands you collect, you can mix and match the universals between the cards to basically customize the best deck ever for your warband and your playstyle, which that does appeal to me as a Magic the Gathering player. I do like that. I'm just not an expert enough at the game to make it worthwhile. So one thing I also forgot to mention earlier is that these models are compatible with Age of Sigmar. So if you do play Age of Sigmar and you do play Ossiarch Bone Reapers, you can use them in your army. The War Scroll is on Games Workshop's website for free. Free to download, use them in your games, enjoy. So let's do some quick pros and cons. The pros, they're easy to assemble, they look great, they were super fun to paint, and they're skeletons. Who doesn't love skeletons? You all should, because you all have a skeleton, and if you don't, that's weird. Price point is a major con for me. $40 for 6 minis that are push fit with no customization. That's kind of a bad thing. They are fragile in areas, and there's a good chance that these are the gateway unit for me buying a whole nother army for a Games Workshop game. I feel sad for my wallet.